They said saving her would get him killed. The Apache woman was too far gone, too close to death, and helping their kind only brought trouble. But ranch hand Michael Garrett had never been good at following rules. When he carried her to his cabin that frozen January night, he had no idea she was a chief's missing sister, or that the sacred necklace around her neck would make him the most protected man in Wyoming and the most hunted by those who wanted her dead. Welcome to Old Life Stories, quotes from times when respect and love were scarce. What are your thoughts on these times? Don't forget to leave a comment. If you enjoy the story, like and subscribe for more. It's story time. But let's go back to where it all started. 24 hours earlier, on a January evening in Wyoming Territory, 1887, the wind howled across the frozen prairie like a living thing, carrying snow that cut like broken glass. Michael Garrett pulled his scarf tighter across his face and urged his horse forward through the gathering darkness. He'd been checking fence lines on the northern edge of the Brennan Ranch when the storm hit, and now he was racing against nightfall to reach shelter. At 28, Michael had worked cattle ranches across 3 territories, never staying long in one place. Some men might call him a drifter, but he preferred to think of himself as someone who hadn't found the right place to settle yet. Wyoming in winter, wasn't it? That much he knew for certain. He was maybe 2 miles from the ranch house when his horse suddenly balked, snorting and dancing sideways. Michael fought to keep control, scanning the white landscape for whatever had spooked the animal. That's when he saw her, a dark shape against the snow, crumpled near a cluster of rocks. At first, he thought it was a dead animal, maybe a deer, but as he dismounted and approached cautiously, his heart lurched. It was a woman. She lay on her side, barely visible under a dusting of fresh snow. Apache, he could tell from her clothing and the long black braid frozen stiff against her back. She wasn't moving. Michael glanced around instinctively, half expecting an ambush. Relations between the ranchers and the local Apache had been tense for months, ever since some hothead settlers had killed 2 warriors over a land dispute. Finding an Apache woman this far from tribal territory meant trouble, no matter how you looked at it. The smart thing would be to ride on, pretend he never saw her. By morning, the storm would have buried her completely, and no one would ever know. But Michael had never been particularly smart about these things. He knelt beside her, brushing snow from her face. She was young, maybe 25, with high cheekbones and skin turned blue-gray from the cold. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. He pulled off his glove and pressed 2 fingers to her neck, not expecting to find anything. A pulse. Faint, irregular, but there. Damn it, Michael muttered. He looked at the darkening sky, the swirling snow, the miles between here and anywhere. Then he looked at the dying woman. There really wasn't a choice at all. He wrapped her in his coat and lifted her onto his horse. She was lighter than he expected, all angles and bone. As he adjusted her weight, something cold pressed against his hand. He glanced down and saw it. A necklace of intricate silver work, set with turquoise stones that seemed to glow even in the dying light. It was the finest piece of craftsmanship he'd ever seen. Clearly valuable, clearly important. Michael's cabin was closer than the ranch house, maybe a mile to the east. He'd built it himself last summer. A simple 1-room structure, but it had a good fireplace and thick walls. He turned his horse toward it, holding the woman against his chest to share what little warmth he had left. The ride seemed to take forever. By the time he kicked open the cabin door, his fingers were numb, and the woman's breathing had become so shallow he could barely detect it. He laid her on his bed and got to work building a fire, forcing his frozen hands to strike spark after spark until the kindling finally caught. As warmth began to fill the room, Michael turned his attention to the woman. Her clothes were soaked through, frozen in places. He'd have to get them off her or she'd die of exposure. He worked quickly and clinically, trying not to think about the impropriety of it all, replacing her wet garments with his own spare shirt and wrapping her in every blanket he owned. The necklace stayed on. Something about it seemed sacred, untouchable. Besides, he told himself, if she survived, she'd want it. He heated water and tried to get her to drink, but she couldn't swallow. Her breathing grew more ragged. Michael had seen hypothermia before, knew the signs. She was in bad shape, maybe too far gone. He spent the night stoking the fire, checking her pulse, trying to warm her frozen limbs. Several times he thought he'd lost her, But each time that faint heartbeat persisted. Stubborn, he thought. She was a fighter. Dawn came gray and cold, but the storm had passed. Michael stood at his window, exhausted, watching the sun struggle through heavy clouds. Behind him, the woman stirred for the first time. He turned to find her eyes open, dark and disoriented. She tried to speak, but only managed a harsh whisper. Michael brought water, helped her drink. This time she could swallow. "Easy," he said. "You're safe. You were freezing to death. I brought you here." She blinked at him, processing his words. Then her hand went to her neck, fingers closing around the necklace. Relief washed over her face when she found it still there. "Who are you?" Michael asked gently. She studied him for a long moment before answering in accented but clear English. "Runs with wind. My name is Runs with Wind. I'm Michael Garrett. You're in my cabin, about 10 miles from the Brennan Ranch. How did you end up out there alone in a storm?" Her expression darkened. "Running. Men chasing me. White men. They want to kill me." Michael felt ice in his gut that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Why? What did you do?" "Nothing. I do nothing." She touched the necklace again. "They want this. Sacred necklace of my family. Worth much money. But more than that, it is sign of leadership. Whoever has this leads our people. You're a chief's daughter?" "Sister. Chief's sister." She tried to sit up but fell back weakly. "My brother is White Cloud, leader of the Arapaho in the Northern Territories. I was traveling to meet him when they attacked our party. Killed my guards. I ran. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and Michael didn't like the picture they made. How many men? Who's leading them? 5, maybe 6. Leader is called Dalton, big man with yellow beard. He said the necklace will bring much gold from collectors in the east." Michael knew Dalton. Every rancher in the territory knew Burke Dalton, a ruthless trader who dealt in stolen goods and wasn't particular about who he hurt to get them. If Dalton knew there was an Apache woman alone with a valuable necklace, he'd hunt her to the ends of the earth. "You need to get to your brother," Michael said. "How far is his camp?" 3 days' ride north, but I cannot go alone. I'm too weak, and they are still looking." She was right. In her condition, she wouldn't last a day on the trail. And if Dalton's men found Michael's cabin, found her here, they'd kill them both without hesitation. "Then we wait until you're stronger," Michael decided. "A few days to build your strength back. Then I'll take you to your brother myself." Runs with Wind looked at him with surprise. "You would do this? Risk your life for a stranger?" Michael shrugged, uncomfortable. "Can't let you die after going to all the trouble of saving you. Wouldn't make sense." Over the next 3 days, as Runs with Wind slowly recovered her strength, Michael learned her story. She'd been visiting relatives in the Southern Territories when word came that her brother needed her for an important council meeting. The necklace she wore had belonged to their father, who had died 6 months earlier. According to their customs, it should pass to the eldest child, her brother, White Cloud. But their father had given it to her on his deathbed with specific instructions to wear it to the council meeting. "Father said the necklace chooses the leader," Runs with Wind explained. "Not blood alone. He believed I had vision, wisdom that White Cloud lacks. My brother is strong warrior, but not always wise in peace. So you're supposed to challenge him for leadership?" "Not challenge. Advise. Father wanted me to stand beside my brother, to guide him. The necklace gives me authority to speak in council, to be heard." Michael understood the weight of it now. This wasn't just valuable jewelry. It was a symbol of power, of legitimacy. No wonder Dalton wanted it. On the 4th morning, Michael was out hunting when he spotted tracks, fresh horse prints, 5 or 6 riders circling his property. Dalton's men had to be. They were searching systematically, and it was only a matter of time before they checked his cabin. He ran back, burst through the door. "They're here. We have to go now." Runs with Wind was on her feet in seconds, still weak, but moving. Michael grabbed supplies, food, ammunition, blankets. They had maybe an hour head start if they were lucky. They rode hard north, Michael's horse carrying double. Behind them, he could hear shouts as Dalton's men found the cabin, found it empty but warm. The chase was on. The next 2 days blurred into a nightmare of cold, exhaustion, and fear. Dalton's men were relentless, gaining ground despite Michael's best efforts to cover their trail. Runs with Wind grew weaker, the exertion too much for her still recovering body. On the second night, As they huddled behind a rock formation trying to stay warm without a fire, she touched his arm. "Michael Garrett, you have given much for a stranger." Why? He thought about it. About all the times he drifted from place to place, never finding where he belonged. Maybe because doing the right thing is the only home I've got. She smiled at that, a sad, understanding smile. "You are a good man. When we reach my brother, I will tell him this. He will reward you. Don't need a reward, perhaps, but you will have one nonetheless." The next morning, they rode into an ambush. Dalton's men had circled ahead during the night, cutting off their route. 5 riders blocked the trail. Dalton himself in the lead, his yellow beard crusted with ice. "Well, well," Dalton called out. "Michael Garrett, didn't expect to see you mixed up in this. Hand over the Apache woman and the necklace, and you can ride out of here alive." Michael's hand moved toward his rifle, but Runs with Wind grabbed his arm. "No, too many. We cannot win." She was right. 5 against 1, with her barely able to sit a horse. The math was simple and ugly. "The necklace," Dalton said again. "Now, or I start shooting." Michael's mind raced, looking for options for anything. That's when he heard it, a sound like distant thunder growing closer. Hoofbeats, many of them. Dalton heard it too, his confidence faltering. "What the hell?" They came over the ridge like an avalanche, dozens of Apache warriors on painted horses. At their head rode a man in full regalia, feathers streaming from his hair, war paint sharp across his face. White Cloud. The warriors surrounded Dalton's men in seconds, arrows nocked and ready. The yellow-bearded trader and his companions froze, suddenly very aware of how badly they'd miscalculated. White Cloud rode forward, his eyes only for his sister. When he saw Runs with Wind alive, relief and joy transformed his stern features. They spoke rapidly in Apache, her hand gesturing to Michael several times. Finally, White Cloud turned to Michael, studying him with intense dark eyes. "My sister says you saved her life, twice, that you risked everything when you could have walked away." Michael nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "She says you are a good man, honorable, that you asked nothing in return." White Cloud paused. "This is rare among your people. It should be common among all people," Michael replied. White Cloud smiled, sharp and approving. He spoke to his warriors, who immediately disarmed Dalton's men. The yellow-bearded trader started to protest, but one look at the surrounding warriors silenced him. "You will go," White Cloud told Dalton. "Go and tell others what happens to those who hunt my family. Tell them the sacred necklace is protected, that my sister is protected, and that those who help her are protected." Dalton and his men were escorted away at arrow point, their weapons confiscated, their pride shattered. White Cloud dismounted and approached Michael, Runs with Wind at his side. The chief placed his hand on Michael's shoulder, a gesture that clearly meant something significant, given the way the other warriors reacted. "From this day, you are brother to my sister and to me," White Cloud declared. "You have a home among our people whenever you need one. You will never be alone again." Something shifted in his chest, something he couldn't quite name. Runs with Wind smiled at him, her hand resting briefly over his. "I told you," she said softly. "A reward, whether you wanted one or not." 6 months later, Michael Garrett stood at the edge of an Apache camp, watching the sun set over the mountains. He'd spent the winter with White Cloud's people, learning their ways, earning their trust. The other ranchers thought him crazy, but Michael had never felt more at home. Runs with Wind approached, the sacred necklace gleaming at her throat. The council had confirmed her as advisor to her brother, a position of great honor and influence. She'd proven her father right, wise, diplomatic, visionary. "You're thinking of leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. "Spring's coming. Should probably find work. Or you could stay. My brother could use a man like you. Someone who understands both our world and the white man's world. Someone who can help us navigate what comes next." Michael looked at her, really looked at her. Somewhere over the past months, she'd become more than the woman he'd saved. She'd become a friend, a confidant, maybe something more. "And you?" he asked. "What do you need?" She smiled, that same understanding smile from the night behind the rocks. "I need someone who does the right thing, even when it's hard. Someone who can be my partner in the difficult times ahead. I'm just a ranch hand." You are Michael Garrett, the man who risked everything for a stranger, the man my brother calls friend, and my people call protector. She touched the necklace, the man the sacred silver chose to save. Michael thought about all his years of drifting, searching for a place to belong. Maybe he'd been looking in the wrong places. Maybe home wasn't a location but a purpose, a people, a person. I'll stay, he said, for as long as you'll have me. Forever then, Runs with Wind replied, taking his hand. That should be long enough. Behind them, the campfires began to glow against the darkening sky. The sacred necklace caught the last rays of sunlight, seeming to pulse with its own inner light. Some said it chose its own protector that frozen January night. Others said it was simply coincidence, fate, luck. Michael Garrett knew the truth. Sometimes the smallest act of mercy can change everything. Sometimes helping a stranger can lead you home. And sometimes being the most protected man in Wyoming means protecting the one you love with everything you have. The sacred necklace had revealed its secret. Not that its wearer was royalty, but that true nobility lies in the courage to do what's right, even when the whole world says you're wrong.